So again, just to say welcome to all of our witnesses here with us today. And of course, it is an exciting time. I just mentioned it in our earlier session, Research and Innovation Ireland. There is a wealth of opportunity, and I think Ireland is definitely well placed to really run with that. And I suppose I am going to be asking you probably at the end of this session what your vision of success is in 4 or 5 years for Research and Innovation Ireland. What do we see when we see that? So that might be one of the summary statements maybe that you might be able to comment on. Again, as a history graduate from the University of Galway, again, I am a very proud arts graduate. And again, I suppose I would have worked previously in Enterprise Ireland and Science Foundation Ireland and in the research office in Galway. So I suppose I have worked as a researcher, a contract researcher. I have worked, again, with many different colleges across the universities. And I suppose I very much understand the needs and concerns around contract research as well, because I've been that person. I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity to work as a project manager on a Horizon 2020 award in the University of Galway as a leader actually on that. And it just shows the excellence across so many areas. And that was the College of Nursing in the University of Galway that led on that, like world-class or European project, again, looking at dementia. So, in terms of the health sphere, and Professor Taylor, of course, in that field, it's incredible when we see the amount and the impact of research and the research that's done and the cross-disciplinary nature of that research as well, the impact that has in saving lives, basically. Like at a very basic level, like so many projects give an impact, or research can be taken and developed, and that can be through spin-outs and it can be through commercialization as well. And we see that either, PhDs and postdocs in these teams have the opportunity to develop that research further, and maybe to make a difference. And in making a difference, sometimes urgency is required. Urgency is important to be able to make a difference to people who are suffering and who are able to maybe get the impacts and benefits of research that may be developed into a campus spin-out. I mean, the likes that I've seen when I worked in Galway, there were some incredible spin-outs, and they came through the BioInnovate Ireland on campus there. And, you have Origin Medical. I mean, they're looking at atrial fibrillation. They're looking at cardiac implants. You've all the stents. You've the absolute incredible med tech area, sort of fields within Galway and across the country in many areas. But, it is very difficult for groups to succeed in this. There is a valley of death when it comes to commercializing and for campus spin-outs to actually succeed and for their research to actually come into being and for it to actually have an impact. It's not a case of we've discovered something here that will make a big impact, we've done the research, we've done the field studies, we've done the clinical trials, or we think we can do the clinical trials. It's not a case that everything gets to the patient or everything gets to the person. So, to my mind, I'm very much focused around the success of innovation, success of Irish research in having an impact, be it from bench to bedside, and how our university systems are doing that. And I suppose, if I might, Professor Livesey, in terms of your role as the Vice President of Research and Innovation in the University of Galway, if I can ask you, how long does it take, in terms of negotiating spin-outs, so negotiating contracts around research, for example, is there sort of a timeline that universities have? Because, again, that can have an impact on the success of a campus spin-out. So what are the challenges there, and what is the average time? Because Galway has been very successful, but I think there could be a lot more success.
So that's a great question. So the average time is between 6 and 7 years, right?
For negotiating contracts?
No, not for negotiating contracts, sorry. No, we can do a contract in 2 weeks, right? That's not a problem.
Is that the standard, 2 weeks to negotiate a contract?
We can do it in 2 weeks, and if it's awkward, the average, I think, is 2 months. Right.
Is that the average across the country?
No, that's the average in Galway. I don't know what the average is.
It's 2 months.
It's 2 months. And the reason we've done that is just because we've invested a bit. Could be cut for precisely the reasons you're putting in, right? So what you're going to have is a systems approach here. You can't beat up on individual researchers saying, would you ever hurry up, right? Because... But
is this, well, I suppose if I might, I suppose what I want to bring it back to here is to look at the capacity around innovation. So this funding here is Research and Innovation Ireland. We also have Enterprise Ireland. We're focusing on the enterprise element. As the Vice President of Research and Innovation, I'm asking you, in terms of your teams that are working with you, how do we manage to ensure that there is a faster response in terms of commercialisation? And how do you think this agency could support that or work with the likes of Enterprise Ireland around that?
Okay, so two answers. One legal, the other one organisational, right? The first one is we need a much clearer open innovation policy. At the moment, our IP policy is a little cluttered, right? Good people have done good things, but we're overemphasising individual IP too early in the research process. If you have a solid open innovation policy to quite late in the system, you let research be research. You get that iterative research going, and you only put in individual profit-making IP at the point you need to, right? So we need to stretch the process of open innovation further, and we'll go quicker.
And in your experience, is it the PI that is the innovator? Is it the PI that will be the chief executive on a campus spin-out?
In my experience, no. Most scientists are good at being scientists.
Exactly. I suppose that's very much a strength. But can I ask you then, in your experience, where are those innovators? Where are the innovators that are going to take that idea, that it's not going to sit on a shelf somewhere in some office, in a library, and it looks lovely and it's all bound? How is that going to actually have an impact here with people, be it across whatever sphere of knowledge that we're looking at?
These are great questions. It's a team sport. There is, because of the complexity of the movement from research to innovation, which is a causal but non-linear relationship, the kind of people who are good at this end tend not to be good at that end. There are researcher entrepreneurs who sit right in the middle. They're few and far between. And if you constructed your system around only selecting those, you'd have no system, right? So what we need to be able to do is construct teams which are as effective at managing and mobilising and curating the separate functions that are in there. Okay. And the key bit then is producing in the country people like yourself who have good experience at research management and are able to move those pieces, because it's a tricky thing. The different personality types and the different value orientations that are placed in an innovation system.
I am interested in this, so I suppose if I can ask you for an example, who are those teams? Those teams exist already because we have technology transfer teams, we have commercialisation officers within our research offices.
Yes.
Who are those teams that you're speaking of? And who identifies the people who are the entrepreneurs or the innovators? Because the science is there. I suppose what I'm curious about is whatever the results are from research, and there's something that may have an impact, that may make a difference. It could be in the social sciences, it could be in medicine, it could be in so many different areas, engineering. How do we identify the person that's going to take that and say, actually, I can see an application, I can see a way that that's going to make a difference to someone's life, and actually that could be in the market in 3 to 4 years' time, and that could make a difference to someone's life? By
having again, going back to my open innovation point, it has to be porous, so that if I'm the kind of person who's an entrepreneur, who's a knowledge-based entrepreneur, I'm working in a creative cluster where I have these excellent scientists and I have access to their ideas without these enormous legal barriers. I don't have to trade away 15% of the value of my future.
How do universities then become sustainable? How do universities...
We don't make any money from IP.
Universities don't?
We make no money from IP. We come out even just about, right, if we're lucky. It's not an income stream. Our income stream is teaching undergraduates.
But do universities not need to consider, how to garner the knowledge that's been created through publicly funded research?
Our mandate, and we absolutely embrace it, is creating maximum value for the country, not for ourselves. We are most functional not when we attempt to maximise the economic return from our own IP, but when we attempt to maximise the return from the IP. And they are not the same thing.
Well, I suppose the question I would just have is around, and again, and I'll pass over then to Senator Riley, but the question I have is that unless research gets out into the market for people to be able to avail of it or benefit from it in whatever sphere it may be, how is it going to have impact within a number of years, as opposed to 10 or 20 years' time?
So it happens to pick it up. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right, because it works. What works is clusters. The reason BioInnovate works so well is not the internal structure of BioInnovate, though that's very, very good, right? What it is because it sits in a cluster where we have access into the condition of practice in the hospitals. We have all that medtech industry in Galway, the fourth
But you
biggest
also have
hub.
venture capital.
The venture capital there is coming in as well.
And clinical trials.
And clinical trials. So
they
it's
get
precisely
results in
because
3 months.
we give all that away. We just literally give away all that access. That's what
I
makes the
think we
value
might
happen.
come back to that in a few minutes. And actually, sorry, Professor Taylor, sorry, thank you very much.
I'm a little bit concerned about the question about how can research have impact if it doesn't end up in the market.
Oh, no.
Research has huge impact in terms of
Yes.
education, in terms of the cultural integrity of the country and the reputation internationally as well.
I suppose where I'm coming from is just, sometimes you see wonderful research ideas, and sometimes, to my mind, you can have excellent, PIs and so on. Sometimes the person that maybe is involved in the, sort of the innovation part may not be the exact same person. And I suppose that's really where I'm just trying to tease out, how do we identify that within the
Maybe
university
by example,
system?
like I said, so one of my industry collaborations that was quite successful was actually with a colleague who I went to college with 20 years ago. We came together.
Okay.
It was internal, it's network, and we can do that with these agencies, like nourish internal networks and get people together, like-minded people. I think that's because it's not really, it's a very organic sort of thing that happens.
So it's communication then.
Exactly. And in my field, it's like not 7 years. It's like from discovering a drug in the lab to it being in the clinic. If you're one of the 1 in 10,000 that actually gets that far over the barriers,
It's
it's
so
like 20
difficult.
years.
It's so difficult.
It's so hugely difficult.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that the knowledge that you generate all the way
completely.
along the way, the people who get trained, the papers that get published isn't of great value.
Oh, huge.
And it's very rarely, in my experience, the person who made the discovery who ends up making the
And how, I
marketing.
suppose what I just want to say is that Research and Innovation Agency, how will this agency support identifying the people? Because sometimes, I guess the people who do some of the innovation may be different. And I suppose that's how do we identify, make those networks, and how does that happen within the university system?
I think personally one of the things that I would do, and we do this in science and in the arts and humanities and across the board, we don't say if you publish a paper it's a great paper, or if you do a piece of academic work it's a great piece of work. There's good academic work and there's not so great academic work. We build on it, and some is standout work. Similarly within innovation, and I think the analogy is we don't rate a university on how many papers they publish. It's what the quality of those papers, what the impact is. And we shouldn't be judging innovation success on how many startups, but what successful startups. And it might be one successful startup, Nokia, or I don't know, mention a specific name, but
it's just such a difficult process. I suppose when you look along the whole line of it, there's so many groups that will come in to support at different stages. And I suppose what this agency, and maybe in the summary it might be, what is success around this agency for research and innovation?